goals helped keep West Ham at United's expense in the Premier League. West Ham's Super League final eliminator against Leeds on Friday will be all ticket at Headingley. As a result, you won't be able to pay cash on the turnstiles. All tickets must be bought before 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon. You can hear full commentary on that game here on BBC Radio Manchester from 7. And UK Athletics have confirmed Charles von Comenay as their new coach.
BBC Radio Manchester, satellite weather with Diane Oxbury.
It's a bit slow first thing in the morning, but I think as we go through the day, the cloud will gradually start to thin and break. We're seeing spells of sunshine now. That will only continue through the afternoon. The winds are relatively light, but they're from the northeast, so it's never going to be a warm day. Top temperatures 16 or 17 Celsius.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones.
0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
It's an interesting place. You all know it. It's a dirty, great big half tube where trains used to come in. Well, we don't need to go through all that, do we? Because, frankly, we've done all that. What we're here for is the Labour Party conference. And it's like any other political conference. There's an awful lot of stands here. I happen to be sat next to one that is simply called Manchester. Narrows it down, doesn't it? It says what it is. What's that phrase they say? It does what it says on the tin. And then we've got city builders, not sure what they are. I'm next to the, hang on, is it West or East? Who cares? West Midlands Authorities leading, what is it? Leading Summit Together. Anyway, it's the West Midlands, presumably here trying to talk the Labour Party into having their conference in the West Midlands next time. Although, frankly, by then I suspect the West Midlands will be shut. And we've got all sorts of people coming to talk to us about politics. And you might think, politics, oh, for God's sake, that is utter tedium. And frankly, it's hard to disagree with you. Except, of course, politics is what affects everything in our society. With me right now is a man who's feeling, well, comfortable perhaps, but then he's probably got 2 years before an election. He is Paul Goggins of, well, I better say Labour MP for Wythenshawe and Sale East. Hi, you all right?
Good afternoon, Alan.
Are you well?
I'm very well, and welcome to the Labour Party conference.
Indeed. Are you enjoying it?
I am enjoying it. I think it's been a low-key conference. I think perhaps best that way, actually. I think people are focusing on the issues, but I think there's a growing sense here, and I'm sure this will be true at the Tory Party conference as well, that the real issues, of course, are not going on inside the conference. They're going on in the real world and the very, very fast-changing economic world that we're now in.
Well, you say the real issues, but one of the real issues is who's going to take us politically, as it were, as a government, who's going to take us through the next decade. And 6 months ago, 12 months ago, we might have said the Labour Party's there for good. Clearly that's not the case. You're going to have to fight if you want to get anywhere in the next election. So what's happening today, by today I mean the conference, to enable that?
Well, the first thing to say is to acknowledge that we are in a real fight now and in the run to the next election. It will be a fight every day, all the way, and even in what are regarded as relatively safe seats like mine, there'll be a real fight on. I know that, and I'm ready for it.
I love that word relatively. That's only come in the last few years, hasn't it, really? I mean, Wythenshawe would have been a safe seat until actually the last election, when your neighbour went to the wall, rather surprisingly in everybody.
I think what the public hate is any sense of complacency, that their vote's taken for granted. And I think they're right to have that view. They demand answers from the politicians, and we've got to be up to the mark. So absolutely no complacency. But I'm pleased that Gordon Brown is the Prime Minister who will lead us through this next decade.
Come on, you can't be pleased.
I am pleased because he has the experience as Chancellor. This is the man who, as Chancellor, tried to persuade the international community about the urgent need to change the economic framework, the global economic framework within which we operate. And now, it's interesting, he has an opportunity because of the changing circumstances to really do that.
If we see it as a football match, and it's not my subject by any stretch of the imagination, but when Gordon Brown walked on the pitch, you were 0-0 draw, because the lead that Labour had over the Conservatives had been eroded already by Blair and the tail end of Blair, so it was 0-0. Now we're at half time, you're 12-0 down, and you're telling me this is the team to take us forward to the end of the match.
What I am saying is that the team's a good team.
are losing.
But at half-time, FIFA have come in and changed the rules of football so that nothing now is the same as it was. The rules have changed, and frankly...
In what respect?
Who would have thought that we would see an American president nationalising banks? Who would have thought that we would have the potential collapse of the Bank of Scotland? Unfortunately, that's been averted by the action taken last week, and it was the quick action from experience and from judgment that our Prime Minister and the Chancellor made that actually made that happen.
Well,
now,
what happened was Poulsen did a lot of things in America, which may well be falling apart in Congress as we speak, but Poulsen did things in America, and the world's share price increased as a result. What Darling did, what Brown did, achieved nothing.
Well, I don't agree with that, and I think that what people will increasingly ask as they look at Cameron, they look at Osborne, they'll say when they're facing these kind of global economic issues, how will they respond? They were against what we did on Northern Rock. They were wrong, we were right. And again last week they were dithering, we got it right. And it's how, in the end, not about whether you're young, whether you're old, whether you're experienced or not, it's your judgment. And I think that Gordon's got that judgment back with experience. And I think over these next few weeks and months, we'll see that come into play. And hopefully, as we see economic situation not resolve, but start to turn in the right direction, inflation coming down, etc., people's confidence will come back, but we will have to earn it.
Isn't the reality that in history, the government could have a say in what went on, but all that really happens now is the city has the government running behind it, yapping at its heels like a lapdog?
Well, I think certainly the world has changed enormously, absolutely, and how you get that balance between intervention and regulation is really the question of judgment that every modern government has.
And it would appear in that order at the moment, intervention and then we'll regulate, which is what they're saying.
Well, we're in tricky times and you're having to make judgments literally day by day, but it is how far you intervene, how far you regulate, how far you legislate, getting that balance right. But it's certainly, there's not one size fits all, one simple answer.
I understand that, and a party that doesn't develop and a party that doesn't change to meet the changing times is a failed party, and frankly a party that deserves to fail. The Labour Party has had some fairly stoic rules for about 100 years now, and suddenly they're out the window. For example, the protection of the working person, the ordinary person in the street, against the multinational bank industry. And instead of saying, let us regulate our way out of this, we'll do away with the concept of monopoly and we'll allow this dirty great monolith to be created, and frankly they will go on and shaft the public, because that's what dirty great monoliths do.
Well, I think...
And I'm talking, of course, about Lloyd's TSB taking over.
But the first priority is going to be people's savings, the money people have in the bank, the mortgages they have, and indeed the jobs that they have. That has to be an absolute priority and required the urgent action that was taken last week. But we are in a new world, and I think the interesting thing is just as the Tories have changed, have got a new leader and are looking more confident, suddenly the environment in which they're working has changed dramatically. And a key test for them will be how they respond to that. And I think we're already onto something here, and I think that what we've seen Alistair Darling announce on Monday, the action we've seen him and the Prime Minister take, I think he's heading us in the right direction.
But is not, to go back to my analogy of the yapping dog snapping at the heels, ought not Brown, who's supposed to know all about this stuff, ought not Darling, who's new to it but he's supposed to know all, and has got some of the best advisors in the world, ought not those two individuals to have seen this coming and done something about it, instead of sitting there and waiting for the financial world to explode in their face?
Well, I think interestingly, of course, Alistair Darling got pilloried in the papers for some of the comments he made a little earlier in the summer. He did know what was coming. That's quite clear when you read back on that interview.
And did nothing about it.
Well, he was already preparing, I think, for the moment when it arrived, and he was ready, and he did act. And I think, Alistair, by the way, is quite an understated individual, very understated, quite shy in many respects.
It's not good in politics nowadays, is it?
But I think he gave a great speech on Monday, and I think he showed people he's got a sure touch. And I think people should go away from this conference confident, yes, in the Prime Minister, also in the Chancellor.
Well, let's come back local then. Let's come back to Manchester, which is all we really care about around here. Who gives a stuff about all that stuff in the city? In truth, it won't have many repercussions locally, but we do have a situation at the moment when we've got the congestion charge that's going to be voted on in December. There's talk of all these jobs that are going to come on the back of that. Some of them will be building jobs and the like, but the building industry is dead on its feet. Will the building industry be able to get the finance they need, and by building I mean civil engineering, get the finance they need to put in place all the things that are promised before the congestion charge comes in?
Absolutely. It's this kind of huge economic investment, the £3 billion investment that's proposed, that will revitalise the market, that will mean
the first
there are jobs for people
$1.5 billion will, it'll be funded, but the second $1.5 £3.5 billion, we'll have to come out of borrowing. Now, who's got the money to lend that? No one's lending anyone anything. The banks don't even trust one another.
Well, I'm sure there'll be a way through that, quite confident that there will be, and it's the kind of economic investment and package that will actually mean that we deliver jobs in the real economy, building jobs and so on. But of course it will bring, and very soon too, a modern public transport system to Greater Manchester. And I feel this particularly because I already have Metrolink in my constituency running down the Sale side. I want the benefits of that to Sale more, to Withenshaw Town Centre, out to the airport. I also want a bus service that works much better for constituents. So it's a key issue for me, and obviously people now will have their say in this quite remarkable referendum. You know, a real first. Everybody will have their say. I think that's
real
entirely
first.
right.
I mean, we must never predict the outcome of elections, otherwise you'd be retiring now. But if we go to the referendum itself, everyone I talk to about the referendum, it's looking, you know, this is not science by any means, but it's looking as if the vote will be no. Then what?
Well, in fact, we had some interesting polling information, didn't we, that was leaked out that actually told a different story. And I think it's a question of the question you ask and the way in which you frame this. You know, this is £3 billion of investment in public transport that will give us a system the like of which they don't have anywhere else in the United Kingdom.
Well, I see the Yes campaign for all the people involved in that, including some local authorities, but all the people involved in that are taking full-page adverts once a week in the newspapers. And I don't see the No campaign having that kind of resource.
Well, it'll be for those who want to mount the No campaign to work that through for themselves. I mean, obviously the Passenger Transport Authority's got to put information out so people understand precisely what's going on, then they can make their own minds up. I think there is a positive argument for it, but people themselves, the constituents of mine and others, will make this decision for Greater Manchester.
And you're a Northern Ireland minister, and I don't think you were a Northern Ireland minister when it was all going wonderful and that nice Mr. Blair solved all the problems. You're in government then, or at least your party was in government and you were in Parliament, but now you're a Northern Ireland minister. I mean, that's a different job than it was 5 years ago. It was a high-profile job. It's somewhat less profile now. I know there's still a lot going on, but it's a lot lower profile.
Well, I've been in Northern Ireland for the last 2.5 years, so I was there for the St Andrews Agreement and the negotiations behind that. I was there on the big day when it happened, and Ian Paisley became First Minister, Martin McGuinness Deputy First Minister, and my job as Security Minister is a different job now than it was some time ago. I have to say, just at the moment, we have a little bit of a standoff in Northern Ireland. The executive in Northern Ireland hasn't met for 3 months, and we're encouraging, obviously, the parties to keep talking and to get through that. And I have to say there's also been a slight upsurge in activity from dissident Republicans who seem intent on trying to kill a police officer. And again, first and foremost, my responsibility is to do everything I can to stop that from happening. But of course, Northern Ireland, I think people over here think it's sorted, it's solved, let them get on with it, we'll get on with our business. But there is still a bit of work to do there. It's been a fascinating time to be doing the job, and I have to say I've really enjoyed it.
And what about John Ware's panorama the other Monday night about the Omagh bombing, about the security services, which you're now, of course, responsible for in Northern Ireland? And OK, it wasn't your time, but it's your baby now. What do we do about that? This suggestion that the security forces at some point decided let it happen, or weren't doing what they were asked to do.
Yeah, well, I saw the programme in question, and it brings back to in a very relevant way the anguish that the families still feel in Omagh. I mean, 29 people brutally murdered, 2 unborn children never born. It was just the most dreadful event in Northern Ireland's tragic 30, 40 years of the Troubles.
But it could have been prevented, according to Panorama.
Well,
it could have been prevented either by the security services giving out the live information they had, or by doing what they were asked to do, which was do the live interception instead of listening to a tape recorder the next day or the next month.
Well, he made some assertions, and rather than me provide the commentary now, I think what we do is what the Prime Minister has decided to do, which is to have an inquiry. The relevant commissioner will look at all the evidence, he'll look at all the recordings that were made, he'll look at the sequence of events, and then he will pronounce the conclusion. I think that would be the right time to comment.
But is it correct that, and I mean in principle, but is it correct that the security services know the answer to this? They knew this question existed but did nothing until a BBC reporter decides after a lot of research to ask it. We've had enquiries. I don't remember the security services going to those enquiries and saying, well, actually, we have tape recordings.
Well, of course, there will be some data. There'll be a lot of it, and that needs to be looked at. But you know, without providing that running commentary on the inquiry that the Prime Minister's asked for, if you look, for example, at the technology available then, it was possible to plot back after the event to see the journey that these people had travelled who were using the mobile phone. We didn't, frankly, then have the technology to track them actively as they were going along. So we're living in a different world technologically now. So it's complex, and rather than kind of providing definitive answers now, I think we wait until we see the outcome of the inquiry. But the Prime Minister did the right thing to order that, because public confidence is important. But I come back again to the families who feel this deep anguish, and you can only be appalled with them at the fact that nobody's been brought to justice for doing this. And it brings me back to the point I made before about dissident Republicans. These people don't come in off another planet. They live in communities. People know who they are. And in modern Northern Ireland, they should report them to the police, and they should be behind bars where they belong to be.
Well, let's come back to politics local. What are you going to be doing for a living in 3 years' time?
Well, I'm going to approach the next election in a hard-working way, but in a confident way. I'm going to put the arguments across, and I hope that in 3 years' time I'll still be the Member of Parliament for Wythenshawe and Sale East. But that's an issue for local people, and they will make the decision. What I do know is, as I fight that next election and I look around Wythenshawe, I look at the housing, I look at the new schools that have been built, I look at the economy and its growth, I see the extra people in work. That'll be a record I'll be very happy to fight the next election on.
And will you be getting the leader, whoever he or she might be, to come down and support you in that campaign?
I'll be delighted to have the Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, come down to the constituency.
Is that the Prime Minister or Gordon Brown?
He was the Prime Minister now and at the next election, Gordon Brown. He was in my constituency a few weeks ago looking at neighbourhood policing in Sale Moor. He was delighted at what's been achieved there, so was I, and I was proud to have him.
And what about the reshuffle that everybody's talking about? What do you fancy?
Well, who knows? This reshuffle is...
You always get rewarded for Northern Ireland, don't you? If you do Northern Ireland, you always get rewarded, so you must get some of that.
The reshuffle was predicted in May, and then June, then July, then August, now September. It'll be October next week, so let's get on with the job.
OK, Paul, good to talk to you always. Thank you very much indeed. Paul Goggins, Northern Ireland Minister, as you heard in the conversation, but more importantly around here, the Labour MP for Wythenshawe and Sale East. It's just after 12 on BBC Radio Manchester. And we got the news headlines, of course, with Mark Edwardson.
British police say a gunman who struck at a school this morning is wounded but still alive. At least 9 students are now thought to have been killed. Gordon Brown's getting ready to make a defiant speech at the Labour conference in Manchester, and police need your help finding 2 men who raped a student near Platfields Park in Manchester at the weekend. Manchester's weather, plenty of sunshine, temperatures up to 16 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester, 2020 traffic. You're never more than 20 minutes away from the latest traffic through the day.
BBC Radio Manchester.
And welcome back to Manchester's Central, which is, of course, the home of the Labour Party conference. We've just been talking to one MP for Wythenshawe and Sale East. I referred to his previous neighbour by referring to Withington, of course, which is now a Liberal Democrat constituency. But there's somebody sat opposite me who hopes that's not going to be the case for too much longer. Lucy Powell, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I've had a very busy week.
You're the Labour parliamentary candidate for... We're not allowed to say that, are we, because of all that PP stuff?
No, you can now. They changed the law. Yes, no, you can. Yeah,
right,
no,
so
it doesn't kick in any expenses or anything like that as it used to. So
it used to be that once we'd said you were the candidate, you had to start paying for everything.
Absolutely.
Except me.
No, you had to start declaring what you spent. So, but no, that rule's been changed now. So
good. So how do you fancy it?
What, my constituency?
Well, any constituency. You've got to change parties if you really want to get into Parliament, don't you?
Well, I think my patch is different probably to quite a few of the others. I mean, certainly, my colleagues who are fighting Tories in sort of Labour Tory marginals, I think are having a much sort of tougher time, clearly, at the moment than maybe I am. My seat was a very safe Labour seat up until the last elections. Yeah. The Liberal Democrats took it. Because there was a big swing on Iraq and tuition fees and those sorts of issues. I thought for a long time that the Liberal Democrats reached their high watermark at the last election. They were on the popular side of the big issue of the day. The government was unpopular, the opposition was even more unpopular, and they came through in a number of seats that they wouldn't have otherwise expected to. So for me, I've got everything to play for in my constituency, and actually I get a really good response.
What have you got to offer to win it back, though? I mean, it looks like all the polls predict that Labour's going to get a kick in. Whether they'll win or lose, Labour's going to get a kick in at the next election. Why would the people of Withington decide, well, OK, Labour's getting a kick in nationally, but here we'll go Labour? It doesn't add up, does it?
Well, there's a long time still to go, as somebody famously said, there's a week is a long time in politics, and I think we were joking the other day that there's actually 70 weeks to go till the general election, so there is a long time to go. I mean, I think people in my constituency, for all their concerns and reservations about some aspects of what the Labour government has done or hasn't done or whatever, they don't want to see the Tories back in, and the only way to guarantee that is to make sure that a constituency like mine is returns a Labour MP. That'll take us one step closer to keeping the Tories out and returning a Labour government.
But they might be happy with what they've got, which is a young, vibrant, energetic parliamentary member.
Well, you might describe him like that. I'm not sure that I would. I mean,
you're not going to say he's not young. You're not going to say he's not energetic.
Well, he doesn't do a great deal in Parliament. I've just given a speech on the conference floor, actually, about the transport proposals in Manchester and the £3 billion investment coupled with a congestion charge. And John Leach, the MP for Withington, an area that's going to benefit enormously from that cash injection, and that is also,
well, he can hardly give a speech here. I don't know.
No. But he won't say whether he's for it or against it. He's the MP for the area. He's the Lib Dems transport spokesperson.
That's a very reasonable position to take and leave the public to make their own mind up about it, instead of having the yes rammed down their throats all the time with promises of jam tomorrow.
Well, you get the yes and the no jam down your throat, but I think people expect elected representatives, MPs, who push themselves forward on public policy and on political platforms to make up their mind about the biggest single proposal for their area in decades. I mean, how can you sit on the fence on that? I mean, you're not really leading your own area then, are you?
But how can a local politician advocate the one thing that people do not want, and that is an increase in their taxes? And whatever way you cut the congestion charge, whatever you buy with it, it's a local tax. It's a tax for driving your car.
For those people that go into town at that time of the day as commuters.
Which is an awful lot, as you can tell by the way this conference in the city centre Manchester knackered the place.
Well, yeah, but whether...
It's nobody's fault.
But, whether many of those are coming from my patch, I don't know. I mean, some wards in my constituency, Manchester Withington, have some of the lowest car ownership in anywhere in Manchester. The hard-working people on lower incomes rely much more on public transport. They need to get to work as well.
But it's still within the public.
You've got to take these decisions about not only injecting that massive once in a lifetime investment in public transport to get people moving and to get people who can't afford a car into town as well, but take the tough decisions about reducing congestion, because
you've still got this. And other parties have tried it. The Lib Dems, or the Liberals, I think they were them, but the Lib Dems famously tried saying, we're going to put a penny on income tax, every bit of it will go to education. They got nowhere with it because the public at large are diametrically opposed to an increase in taxes. That might be a bad thing. It might be a stupid thing on their part, but it doesn't matter. That's what they'll vote for.
Well, I agree with you on that score, but, there are ways of redistributing how those taxes are paid and how you organise it. I mean, what I will say about the Liberal Democrats is it's their national policy to have introduced road pricing on the busiest roads and the busiest routes.
Well, the government's planning it at the moment. We actually have projects being... We've actually got commissions out at the moment for people to bid for the opportunity to try that out for the government. So your own government's not diametrically opposed to the concept of road pricing anyway.
But the point I'm making is, here is the Liberal Democrat MP for the area. He's the Liberal Democrat transport spokesperson, a party whose policy is in favour of road pricing, who's saying he can't make up his mind whether he's for or against congestion charging. To me, that is not someone who is standing up for their area. That is not the young, energetic, vibrant MP that you described. That's somebody who is afraid to make decisions and afraid to confront the challenges that we face for fear of losing some votes here or some votes there, and that I don't think that they're the kind of politicians we really need in our area. So I want to see him lose and get myself elected instead.
Of course you do, and why not? I've never quite understood that. You've already got a good job. It's not like you're looking for something to do all day. Why do you want to be a Labour MP?
Because I grew up in Manchester in the 80s, and that's when I sort of joined the Labour Party, really, because I saw firsthand. I mean, I was so one of the lucky ones that kind of came through that. Then you remember Manchester back in the 80s, and vast swathes of this city were just in absolute decay, and the people that were born there and grew up there had very, very little chance to get out of that. Schools were crumbling, hospitals were crumbling, and that injustice that I kind of grew up in then, that unfairness of people that I was at school with who were as clever and as bright as me, but just weren't from the same kind of home that I was, didn't have the same sort of opportunities as me, then ended up in prison and in difficulties, and it drives me to want to make things better and make sure that future generations don't.
Is politics the way to do that? I mean, you're involved in, I don't mean this in an offensive way, but you're involved on an administrative side almost with science. Well, isn't science the way the world is going to be resolved? Politics is the answer, sure.
Well, all of it. I mean, without sort of political leadership, you wouldn't get the investment in science and innovation. Those things would not be.
We don't get the investment in science and innovation. We haven't done for decades.
Well, no, the science budget's been increased dramatically over the last 10 years, and that's why you don't have to go down Oxford Road these days to see what's happening at the university. I mean, the transformation of the campus of the University of Manchester, which is now fast becoming one of Europe's leading universities, that just wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the kind of money that the Labour government is making available. So all these things are political decisions at the end of the day. How do you want to spend your money? Do you want to support people and help them get on through educating them, through skilling them, through making sure that there's a stable economy, so there's jobs and opportunity? Or do you just say, no, what we'll do is we'll have small government, we'll just let the markets run riot and just see how it goes, and those who can swim fastest get to the end first. I don't believe in a society like that, and that's why I've got involved in politics.
And seeing as though you're presently involved in science, because I've been trying to get my head around this,
okay,
has it been worth it, the amount of money they've spent on that dirty great big hole in the ground with the collider thingamajig that hasn't worked properly yet and has just broke down again? Well, is that kind of scientific experiment of any use to us?
I think so. I mean, I think the science these days, I mean, I did a chemistry degree, so I've got a long way from that,
Long,
but, I mean, even doing a chemistry degree, that the advancements in science are so far ahead of really the layperson, and I count myself in that, even as somebody with a degree in it, understanding about where the edges of science are at the moment. So I think that they probably will uncover things that will be really important for other areas of human advancement, whether that is, tackling issues around climate change or providing, more effective and efficient fuel, and that means we don't have to rely on fossil fuels. All those, providing cheap food for people in third world countries, or whatever. All those challenges that we face, I hope will have a scientific solution, because I don't think they'll have other. I think it'll be a combination of changing human behaviour, but actually technological and scientific advancement.
But that speaks to the question I asked a few moments ago: why do you want to be a politician? Because here you are, you've gone through the whole school system at public expense. I'm not criticising it, so did I. You went to university at public expense. You specialised in chemistry. Chemistry may well hold the solution to all those things you just referred to, and yet you're not going to do that. You're going to throw all that education stuff and all that knowledge in the bin and stand on your hind legs and talk for a living.
Well, no,
it's almost offensive to the taxpayer that funded your education.
No, not at all. And in fact, we've done quite a bit of work in Nesta, the organisation that I work for, which shows that some of the most successful people, say working in the financial services, for example, are those with science degrees. So you don't just have to become a scientist when you've got a science degree. It gives you skills, it gives you a way of analysing things, a way of looking at things, which is different from doing other kinds of degrees that you can then apply in different ways in new sectors, in new fields. And actually that's where innovation these days. That's the frontier of innovation, is where there is that kind of cross-fertilisation of different skills around different things. So I think as a politician, I have a slightly more methodical and logical approach to things. I'm quite analytical. I would be more logical about my approach to whether a policy would work or it's the right thing or not, and the way that I work. I wouldn't be that person had I not done and had the kind of education that I've got.
In the best way you can manage, taking your personal preferences out of it and just analysing the data, or do we say data?
I know where this is going.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
I won't bother asking the question. Go on. How's he going to do?
Well, look,
I better ask it for everybody else. Gordon Brown, using just analysis. How's Gordon Brown going to do?
Well, it's obviously tough right now. You know, the Labour government is not very popular. Well, I mean, I think I don't know whether you can't say how things would be if somebody else was.
Let's say if it was doing superbly, he'd be claiming the credit. So it's not doing superbly. Let's say he's entitled to the blame.
Well, I'm sure you've heard this mantra throughout the day and throughout the week.
I'm sure there's a room where you all rehearse it, don't you? You chant it together.
Well, no, there is some truth in the fact that there's quite a lot of truth in the fact that this is a global economic situation that's affecting every single country around the world.
But I'm not talking about the economics. The economics, yes, there's very little control any chancellor of the past 100 years has had over the economics of our society. That's the nature of the beast. I'm talking about the politics, and it's the politics that's falling to bits in his hands.
Well, I don't know. I mean, his political response to what's going on, has shown kind of good leadership in the sense of his interventions over the last sort of few weeks with the Lloyds TSB and HBOS merger and other measures to shore up the financial markets, which, let's be clear, the Tories wouldn't do that. The Tories would say, let's the markets just
Well, if I was prepared to concede, and it doesn't matter whether I do or not, but if I was prepared to concede that, yes, he and Alistair have done a cracking job with this, but then that's his background. Actual leading the party of being Prime Minister, the polls tell us he's been rubbish at.
Well, I mean, I don't feel he's done a huge amount to support and help me and lead me in terms of winning back a vital kind of key marginal constituency for the Labour Party. So I wouldn't agree with that. I mean, I think there's obviously he's got some presentational kind of things in terms of he's not brilliant on the telly, for example, and I think that these days modern politics does demand that you are a very, very powerful communicator. But
you need charisma. He ain't got it.
But you go back 18 months, and what everyone wanted was an end to spin. They wanted an end to all of that, and then that's the kind of character that you've got. So I mean, he is who he is. You know, he's not Mr. Charisma in that sense. But
the argument that he is what he is. He is what he is, and it's not doing him any good.
Well, let's see.
We've seen.
Let's see how that
we wish you well
over the next few days.
We wish you well, Lucy. Thank you very much indeed. Lucy Powell is the Labour candidate for Manchester Withington. She's trying to overturn a majority of just 670 for Liberal Democrat John Leach, who in his past overturned a majority of 11,500, which was an extraordinary turn, to say the very, very least. I don't know. Who have we got? I know who we've got. I recognise you. How are you? You all right?
I'm very well, thanks.
We've only ever spoken on the telephone before. You've never blessed us with your presence. Ruth Kelly, Bolton West. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Enjoying this conference week. Nice to be in Manchester. Absolutely.
Well, nice. It's in Manchester. Why are you enjoying it? It's hell on earth.
Not at all. I think Manchester is doing itself proud, actually, and everybody says it's the best possible conference venue. They talk about Manchester's economic renaissance, about how well the city is doing. I mean, it's really good to be from the northwest and part of Greater Manchester.
I'll accept all of that. It was the other side of it, the sort of party politics that wasn't going awfully well. Everybody in here is saying, well, what's he going to say? Is he going to save himself?
Do you know, there's that chatter every single year, and people talk about the need to do the best speech of his life, and it's a make or break speech. They say the same about Cameron, incidentally. And, every year Gordon makes a very good speech and people feel inspired as they come out. So, you know, I take that all with a pinch of salt.
All right, well, his great speeches in the past have been about the economy. The economy has gone to hell in a handcart presently, but you're going to argue that they're doing wonderful things about it. But what about beyond the economy? What's he like as a leader then, when you're sat opposite him in cabinet?
Well, I think that people realise that the job of government now is to focus on getting us through these difficult economic times. You say, what about beyond the economy? Actually, that's what people really care about, is what they want to talk about. It's about the cost of eggs and bread and milk.
Round here, we're quite keen on your subject, aren't we? Transport.
Oh, transport, well, that as well. But, you know, the economy is hugely important, and, of course, transport fits into that too, because in the previous times of economic difficulty, Conservative governments, time after time after time, have just slashed investment in public transport. Actually, we are determined not to do that.
And yet you're going to make us go into debt to get a decent public transport system in Manchester. Why can't you just pay for it?
What we must do now is prepare for the long term. Not take our eye off the ball. Yes, there are things we have to do in the short term to help people through. It's going to be tough. People know that. The international environment is extremely difficult. We've imported this problem from the United States. We'll do all we can to help people in the short term, but we must be prepared to invest. And what we've offered Greater Manchester...
You're giving Greater Manchester £1.5 billion, which in government terms is not a great deal of money, and then you're going to make Manchester go into debt for the other one.
Well, we've set £2 billion aside to tackle congestion over the next 10 years. And Greater Manchester have come to us with a scheme that asks for 3/4 of all of that money to go to Greater Manchester. Now, it's a hugely ambitious scheme. We've said we're prepared to back ambitious programmes with hard cash, but we absolutely have to be convinced that as a result, not just does public transport improve, but actually congestion is tackled and the economy is supported too. And that means doing something about traffic.
Hasn't the congestion charge debate actually, and I know the referendum will go ahead in December, but it hasn't become somewhat redundant given the very close eye the government is now putting on road charging? You've got people out to tender already for...
No, actually, I've made it very clear that road pricing, national road pricing, is not on our agenda at the moment. We don't have the answers that people want on privacy, on technology. In fact, no one even knows how such a scheme would run. So I don't think that is the answer in the short term. The answer in the short term is tackling congestion where it is. And that's in our towns and cities across the country and on our motorways.
People who talk to me about the congestion charge on the phone, and some are in favour, let me say that categorically, but there are also people who say, well, it doesn't matter, because if we vote no, they'll bring it in via some other process, which is how much faith they have in the honour of politicians. And road pricing could do exactly that, because you could vote no on the congestion charge, and then the government 2, 3, 4 years down the line says congestion charge anyway. Road pricing.
We're not even having the debate about national road pricing at the moment. It's not on my agenda.
But you're having it about certain areas, and Manchester, if it didn't have the congestion charge, would be one of them.
We're asking volunteers to come forward who want to see a revolution in the public transport system and are prepared to really tackle congestion, which will thwart their economic growth in the future. Now, Greater Manchester has been right at the forefront of this, coming forward, as I said, asking for a chunk of money which represents 3/4 of all we've got for the next 10 years. There's a massive chance for Greater Manchester, but obviously the case has to be made. We've given programme entry. That's not the final say. All the details have to stack up. Obviously, people need to be consulted. We only want to work with the willing. So even if there were a yes vote in a referendum, the government would still need to decide whether or not all the financial case is stacked up.
So if we vote yes, we still might not get it?
Well, that needs to be made on the basis of all of the evidence. So it's not the only hurdle that needs to be passed. But obviously it's an important
what
one.
you just
obviously
said was
if we vote
yes,
is a very important one.
But what you just seemed to say was if we vote yes, it doesn't necessarily mean that congestion charge will happen.
Well, Greater Manchester's got programme entry. Which is the first stage along that road.
Well, that question's quite important, isn't it?
No,
it doesn't need a long answer.
I'm very, very clear about it.
Well, clearer would be yes or no, would be a lot clearer. Yes.
Yeah. It's the first
yes, it does mean that, or no, it doesn't.
First hurdle passed.
First hurdle passed. They might fall at the second.
Well, we'll see what the people of Greater Manchester say, and there's detail to be done. There are
but
more
they might
stages.
fall at the second hurdle.
Well, you know, I can't anticipate that, or I'd be taken to court because it would look as if I'd prejudged the conclusion.
I'm not asking you to judge it. I'm asking you whether the options are there. You're telling me about the referendum. You're not prejudging that merely by saying we're having one.
And the answer. What the people of Greater Manchester are going to say.
And you might say, and they might say yes, they might say no. But if they say yes, they then go to another hurdle.
I couldn't be clearer. There is another hurdle to jump. Even after that, one of my colleagues in the Department for Transport, Rosie Winterton, will be making the final decision. So that's still to come.
And in one sentence, because we don't have a great deal of time, and I think you'd prefer it was just one sentence anyway, there's a lot of talk in the newspapers about you not being in government. You personally.
Well, I wouldn't believe anything that's said in the newspapers.
Would you not?
No, I never do, actually.
Why not? Do you not?
I never do.
Even when they say you're brilliant? Although I don't recall
I like to recall those phrases, obviously. No, I'm happy getting on with my job. I think now is the time to focus on the challenges in front of us. I think we're making a real difference in transport policy. I'll be setting out some of that tomorrow. I look forward to seeing what Greater Manchester has to say and whether they want to work with us in the future.
We shall see. Ruth Kelly, a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. We're somewhat late. It's what I do best, being late, but we've, at 1:45, I think it is, we have the news headlines with Mark Edwardson. I'm sorry, Mark.
Thank you very much. Finnish police say a gunman who struck at a school this morning is wounded but still alive. At least 9 students are thought to have been killed, and there are reports now of a bomb threat to the school. Gordon Brown's getting ready to make a defiant speech at the Labour conference in Manchester, and Lancashire County Cricket Club's publicly unveiled £70 million plans for the redevelopment of Old Trafford. Nothing to talk about as far as the traffic's concerned here on BBC Radio Manchester this lunchtime. Well, not at the moment anyway. More news when we get it. Let's take a look at the weather. Plenty of sunshine. Top temperatures 16 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Will Perry.
Good afternoon. Well, we're still awaiting the Abu Dhabi United Group's takeover at Manchester City to be officially completed this afternoon. That deal still needs to be ratified by the Premier League, but the new chairman, Khaldoon Al-Mubarak, has had some exciting things to say. BBC Radio Manchester's Delith Lloyd has more.
Al-Mubarak has outlined his plans to build a dynasty at Eastlands over the next 10 years, with manager Mark Hughes the key to the club's success. The new chairman says he and owner Sheikh Mansour are extremely happy and delighted to be a part of Manchester City. He's predicting the next decade will be an exciting period for the club and that their investment is one for the future. Al-Mubarak says they are fully behind manager Hughes and executive chairman Gary Cook and insists they won't interfere with matters on the field, merely saying they're there to help support build a sustainable club. Hughes is described by Al-Mubarak as good as they get and everything you would want in a head coach. The new owners have also outlined their intent to build on the success of the club's academy by making it the best in Europe. Al-Mubarak has already spent time at Platt Lane with academy director Jim Cassell.
Meanwhile, City boss Mark Hughes has admitted that Robinho wasn't convinced about swapping Real Madrid for Eastlands at first. Hughes says initially he showed signs of being apprehensive, but that apprehension went very, very quickly. Well, Robinho's former Brazil teammate Ronaldo was back in full training today, 7 months on from a knee injury which forced him to leave AC Milan. Ronaldo, who was of course linked with a move to Eastlands, is currently without a club and has reportedly said he wants to move to French side Paris Saint-Germain. The Carling Cup returns this evening. Manchester United face Middlesbrough in the third round at Old Trafford. United will once again use the competition as an opportunity to give youth its chance. Reds defender Wes Brown thinks that's the right thing to do.
I mean, some people used to criticise it, but I think it's only right that, you know, the young lads get a chance. I mean, they're good players. They're not going to play week in and week out in the league. So, you know, when these opportunities come, I think it's only right that they take the chance and be put in there.
Well, the all-new Manchester Sports is live at Old Trafford from 7 o'clock this evening. Rochdale manager Keith Hill will be Steve Wyeth's special guest. An independent tribunal has ruled in favour of Sheffield United and against West Ham over the Carlos Tevez affair. United claimed Tevez wasn't eligible to play at the end of the 2006-07 season, yet played a key role in West Ham's Premier League survival at their expense. The club is claiming more than £30 million in compensation from West Ham. Another tribunal will decide on the amount of compensation to be paid. FIFA have given Georgia the all-clear to stage World Cup qualifying matches once again. Georgia's home game against Ireland earlier this month was moved to Germany due to the nation's conflict with Russia. In Rugby League, Leeds Rhinos say this Friday's Super League final eliminator against Wigan Warriors at Headingley will be all ticket. That's a safety concern about part of the South Stand, which means capacity's been cut. As a result, you won't be able to pay cash on the turnstiles. All tickets must be bought before 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon. You can hear full commentary on that game right here on BBC Radio Manchester from 7 o'clock. Warrington have told BBC Radio Manchester that they're in talks with Salford over a possible move to the Willows from forward Rob Parker. The Wolves front rower is surplus to requirements at the Halliwell Jones. Meanwhile, Salford, they've asked the RFL for clarification that Craig Stapleton and Philip Lulai will become exempt from the overseas quota. In Rugby Union, the International Rugby Board are trying to negotiate a short-term fix in the row between Scotland and English clubs over player release. Scottish Rugby lodged an official complaint with the IRB after Guinness Premiership players, including Sales, Jason White and Rory Lamont, missed yesterday's training session at Murrayfield. Lewis Hamilton should find out later today whether he's been successful in overturning a 25-second penalty that stripped him of victory in the Belgian Grand Prix. He's argued to an appeal court in Paris that he didn't benefit from cutting a chicane in that race, but triple world champion Sir Jackie Stewart thinks Hamilton is fighting a losing battle.
Not many people win appeals against the FIA and their court, which is in itself something to be somewhat concerned about. I strongly believe there has to be a serious look at the governance of the sport. We don't have the same stewards, for example, in Valencia, to Spa, to Monza. I don't think that's good. I think they should have full-time stewards, professionals. We are running at the moment with part-time amateurs. I do not believe that's the way to be running the world's largest capital investment sport.
Well, if Hamilton's successful from that appeal, he'll lead the Drivers' Championship by 7 points. Charles van Commenay is the man charged with revitalising British athletics. The 50-year-old Dutchman has been confirmed today as the new head coach of UK athletics, replacing the departing performance director Dave Collins. And finally, for now, Great Britain will face Ukraine at home in the Europe-Africa Zone 1 of the Davis Cup next year. Britain were included among the seeded nations for today's draw in Madrid, giving them a bye past the first round of ties to be staged in March.
The next live action on the Northwest's biggest sports station.
Well, as you've just heard, Manchester United take on Middlesbrough in the third round of the Carling Cup this evening. We'll be live at Old Trafford with Rochdale boss Keith Hill from 7.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Excellent. A number of people have pointed out, when we were talking about chemistry degrees earlier and politics, Margaret Thatcher had a chemistry degree. I don't know what we make of that, but we'll not mention it to Lucy. Also, Christopher in Middleton says this congestion charge tax idea could be the making of Manchester by getting the apathetic non-voters off their backsides and down to the polling booths to vote this loony Labour lot out of Manchester Town Hall and Westminster for good. So, Christopher, you really ought to come off the fence, mate, but no matter. Anyway, that's the congestion charge. If you wander around the hall here at the Labour Party conference, you'd be surprised what you come across. For example, I've got a leaflet here from Parley Training, professional training for public affairs personnel. I'm not altogether sure who they are, but no matter. Tells me how to get through legislation. This session will describe the origins of bills. Just look at the gas board, you want bills. How are they formulated and drafted? How are they introduced? So that's available. We've got Peel Energy, which is basically Peel Holdings bunging up the canal, putting turbines on and selling you the electricity. Well, that's fine, and no doubt they'll be using it to power the BBC when they own us. But that's that. Also, one that I found remarkable, the Falkland Islands have got a stall. They must think it's bloody boiling in here, but anyway, they've come all that way. And it tells you how to get to the Falkland Islands. Well, of course, you don't have to do anything. You just have to upset an Argentinian and Margaret Thatcher will take you on a big boat. But the Falklands are easily accessed, apparently, by 2 major flight routes. LAN Airlines, that's not Allan Airlines, unfortunately. LAN Airlines fly to the Falklands every Saturday morning, departing from Santiago and flying via the southern Chilean city of Punta Arenas. Once a month, the flight also stops at Rio Gallegos in Argentina. So not the kind of thing you want to rush to, but there you are. We've got the National Deposit, they've got a stall. The local transport bill, nearly there. Busy Bees childcare vouchers, which is all about bees, rather bizarrely, and children. The Citizens of Ice Bureau have got a stall, and also has the People's History Museum, which is not bad considering it's shut. I refer to the fact that it's being developed. They're getting, I think it was about £6 million. The man sat opposite will know. He's Nick Mansfield. He's the director of the People's History Museum. £6 million?
No, 11.3.
Was it 11? Oh dear God! There you are. You don't have to borrow any of that and have a vote about it.
No.
I thought it was 6.
No. It's 7 million plus from the Heritage Lottery Fund.
That's what I remember.
Yeah,
yes.
2 million.
And I got that wrong, but
2 million from the Northwest Development Agency.
Right.
Allied London PLC giving us a good chunk, and various other contributors as well.
With all that money, you'd have thought it'd still be open.
Well, I have to correct you there, Alan.
Yes, I know. Everybody's correcting me this morning. Why should you be left out?
We're not actually shut, because our archive and study centre is still open on Princess Street, and we do have a gallery within the 1830 warehouse at our good friends, the Museum of Science and Industry. And that's open 7 days a week. So all our greatest hits can still be seen there in the period before we reopen, which will be the end of next year, end of 2009.
As soon as that?
As soon as that.
Because I see you some mornings just stood there looking at the building work with a tear rolling down your cheek.
It's 12 years in the inspiration for this project, but it is going up as we speak. There's all the steel work.
And it's
brings a tear to me eye. It's going to be doubled in size, twice as much to see at the collections, more education spaces, a cafe, a shop, and so on. And it's going to be very different because you probably knew that the last exhibition that we did was called Battle for the Ballot, the struggle for the vote in Britain, opened by Billy Bragg, our good friend.
I avoided it on the fear that he might sing.
He did, actually.
I thought he might. I made the right decision not to come. Dear God,
it was a great evening.
Without that.
He did a unaccompanied version of the Internationale, actually, at the end. But it's going to be the theme will be the growth of democracy in Britain. We feel that people, particularly young people, don't know about those hard-won rights that we in Manchester we're at the forefront of. Peterloo, suffragettes, and so on, and that becomes the central theme of the new galleries. So it will be twice as big and twice as good.
I mean, it's interesting actually because you talk about the history of democracy, the history of the working class movement, which is where democracy came from, for want of a better term, because the rich didn't want democracy, did they?
They opposed
it
still most of the time.
So, but why do you think it is then, given that history and given that we are engrossed in our history in Manchester, why don't we vote?
It's really difficult, isn't it? People do vote, but they vote for things like Big Brother and so on.
Yes, indeed. I was thinking more of the democratic voters.
I think because people don't value it, as I said, there's a tremendous amount of ignorance about. People think it's always been there, and of course it's actually within our lifetimes that one person, one vote has been established. There were plural business votes until the late 40s, and so forth. So it's only a very recent thing, the establishment of full democracy. Northern Ireland, as you know, in the late 60s, and so on. So I think our mission is to do a bit of education work on that.
Doesn't democracy and an interest in democracy require diametrically opposed groups, whereas at the moment we're all, no disrespect to any of the political parties, but it's hard to separate them if you're not deeply involved in politics.
It is.
And so why bother voting? The same people will get in. University educated, nicely turned out.
And professional politicians as well. People that really have never had any other job. I think that's right, and I think that's been an enormous change in the last 2 generations in particular. And I think the electorate is much more volatile than it used to be, whereas, as you know, people used to vote on class-based lines, basically. And that divided it all. So I don't know what the answer is. I think I'd like to see the education department nationally do much more on encouraging citizenship. They don't quite know what to do with it at the moment, and I think it's very important for the democratic health of this country.
What contribution can the People's History Museum, when it reopens Big Style, what contribution can it make to that?
Right. Well, as I said, we're going to be doubling the size of the museum. We have an emphasis on our education programmes. You may know we have these living history performances. We have a programme of 7 actor educators who reenact and interact with school groups and adult groups about that story and try and make people think about the struggles that their forebears had to go through to achieve that, and maybe they'll value that a bit more.
And it's back end of next year?
Back of next year. end of 2009. It will be a wonderful occasion. We look forward to welcoming you.
You should invite Gordon Brown. He'll have nothing to do by then. He'll come and open it for you. He'll be unemployed. Nick, thank you very much indeed. Nick Mansfield, Director of the People's History Museum. Yeah, I've got that. It's fantastic. A strange idea, democracy, says David, telling people what's good for them and what they need rather than finding out what they actually want. That's interesting. What do they want? You tell me. I'm there every day. So you come and tell me tomorrow on 0161228 2255 what you want, and I'll do my best to get someone to provide it for you. Housing Minister Caroline Flint said empty apartments and flats across Greater Manchester could be bought up from property developers, according to this email from I know not who, but no matter. And I'm on a laptop. I can't cope with laptops. Dear God, who invented the laptop? A laptop is a portable computer that doesn't work. But there you are. Anyway, straightforward matter. If you want to join us today, you can do it via email. It's radiomanchester@bbc.co.uk, and we're going to be talking politics for another hour. But why would we? We're at Manchester. Why wouldn't we? We're at Manchester Central, and we're here, of course, for the Labour Party conference, which is taking place again in Manchester because they know what's good for them. We'll find out whether their leader's good for them later.
Manchester Sports Tonight has League Cup football from Old Trafford, and our special guest from 7 is Rochdale boss Keith Hill.
And we've a few MPs and a few others to talk to a little later. All you have to do is stay tuned and you will find out all that Labour has to offer. Shouldn't take an hour, that, should you?
95.1 FM.
DAB Digital Radio.
And the World Wide Web.
This is Manchester.
BBC Radio Manchester.
At 1 o'clock, Gordon Brown prepares to face his friends and foes in Manchester, and several people are killed by a gunman at a Finnish school.
City's new chairman outlines his plans.
Well, we're not looking at a bad afternoon. Mostly dry with some sunshine and top temperatures of 16 Celsius.
And traffic at the moment seems to be coping fairly well in the city centre of Manchester, surrounding the closures near Manchester GMX for the Labour Party conference.
Good afternoon, I'm Mark Edwardson. Gordon Brown is preparing to make one of the most important speeches of his political career. He'll address the Labour Party conference in Manchester in just over an hour's time. Cabinet ministers have been rallying around their leader amid continuing speculation about his future. Meanwhile, Ruth Kelly has reiterated congestion charging might not happen even if you vote yes in a referendum. After a vote, ministers will fully assess whether or not the so-called TIF bid represents value for money for the taxpayer. In addition, the amount of cash available for public transport will depend on whether other cities also adopt congestion charging. The Transport Secretary and Bolton West MP has just told us nothing's certain.
There's a massive chance for Greater Manchester, but obviously the case has to be made. We've given programme entry. That's not the final say. All the details have to stack up. Obviously, people need to be consulted. We only want to work with the willing. So even if there were a yes vote in a referendum, the government would still need to decide whether or not all the financial case stacked up.
There are fears several people have been killed in a shooting at a college in Western Finland. Some local media reports put the number of dead at 9. A gunman walked into the college in the town of Kauhajoki, and opened fire on some of the students inside, who were aged between 16 and 20. Our reporter, Sean Crowley's in the Finnish capital of Helsinki.
The gunman entered the school wearing a ski mask and carrying firearms. Automatic gunfire was heard from the college soon after. Witnesses saw young people running from the college screaming and covered in blood. Police said that the incident is over. The gunman has got gunshot wounds. We don't know whether those are self-inflicted or he was shot by police. He's currently in custody.
The Bury-based sportswear retailer JD Sports has bucked the current economic storm, reporting a 71% increase in half-year profits. The chain, which has 430 shops across the country, made more than £9 million. Analysts say JD's success is based upon a strong own brand and a reduced reliance on replica football shirts. Its executive chairman, Peter Cowgill, says there are fewer customers around, but JD is more successful at persuading them to buy.
The number of people buying compared to the number of people entering the store door has increased, which tends to suggest to us that both the staff are more proactive on the shop floor and that the product is more appealing.
Lancashire's Old Trafford cricket ground is set for a radical redevelopment. The club's unveiled £70 million plans, which could see a striking new floodlit stadium ready for the Ashes series in 5 years' time. It's part of a wider regeneration plan around Old Trafford, including new businesses, shops and homes. Lancs and England star Andrew Flintoff's delighted the historic pavilion is staying and the club's not moving elsewhere.
There's a few things said, a couple of years about moving to Wigan or possibly Eastlands over that way, but it's nice we're staying at Old Trafford. One of the big things for me as well, they've kept the pavilion. It's a great building, this one. They've changed the roof a little bit, but, it's steeped in tradition, so, it's pleasing we've kept it.
More than 130 people from East Manchester have heard the words "You're hired" today at a special graduation ceremony hosted by the first winner of the BBC's Apprentice, Tim Campbell. He addressed the men and women who were set to take up their jobs at the new Tesco Extra store in Gorton next month, after completing a training scheme in partnership with local agencies, including Job Centre Plus. The programme's mainly aimed at getting the long-term unemployed back into work.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Dennis Lloyd.
Manchester City's new chairman, Khaldoon Al-Mubarak, has outlined his 10-year plan at the club and says he wants to build a dynasty with Mark Hughes as manager. He's predicting the next decade will be an exciting period and has assured fans that he won't interfere with on-the-field matters. Having been relegated to the Championship 2 seasons ago, Sheffield United could now be compensated up to £30 million. They've won an independent tribunal over the registration of Carlos Tevez, whose goals helped keep West Ham up at United's expense. Manchester United begin their Carling Cup campaign this evening. They take on Middlesbrough in the third round. We'll be live at Old Trafford from 7 o'clock with Rochdale manager Keith Hill, our special guest. And Dutchman Charles von Comenay has been confirmed as the new head coach of British Athletics through to the 2012 London Olympics.
BBC Radio Manchester satellite weather with Heather Stott.
Well, we're into a run of quite settled weather, and this afternoon looks pretty good. It's dry, there is some cloud around, but that cloud is thinning and breaking, so we will see some nice spells of sunshine and top temperatures of 16 Celsius.
Allan Beswick, halfway through your workday.
BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you. How are you? Are you all right? I'm Allan Beswick, as that singing stuff just indicated, and I'm here at the Labour Party conference in Manchester. We didn't go to the Lib Dem ones. Why should we? They didn't come to us, and we're probably not going to do the Tory one either because they didn't come to us. But if they do, in the quest for balance, we'll do them too. But right now, we're just doing Labour because they did come to us 2 years ago and absolutely loved it because we're entitled and able to cage them. They like living in cages, the politicians, so we put a big cage up all the way around the centre of Manchester and we keep them all in here. And it's nice because every so often somebody arrives and sticks a bun through the cage thinking they need feeding, but they don't because they have the life of Riley, as you know. One of the reasons they're in Manchester is because certain Manchester MPs rattled the cage some years ago. One of them was the Labour MP for Manchester Central. I refer, of course, to Tony Lloyd. Are you all right?
I'm great, Alan. Nice.
And
nice
you
to
did
see
go. That's Manchester Central, sorry.
Yeah.
But you...
They call me after railway station.
And they've changed the name of the railway station and then back again just to match your title.
And that's as it should be.
I know, it should have been called back. What was that GMEX all about?
Well, it's a long story.
I know.
And we're all too young to remember it, so...
Far too young to remember. I came here when it was a railway station. I was living in Warrington. I just got a job with a firm of accountants. And I used to drive in frequently. And they sent me on the train with some papers for a firm in Brazennose Street.
Oh, yeah.
And I got the file under my arm and I walked all the way around the one-way system because it was the only way I knew to. It's only across the road. I was living.
I think that's possibly, coming from Warrington, the big city of Manchester. Those bright lights confused you.
It was very, very scary at the time. But you're one of the people that fought to get the conference here.
No, it's great. I'm really pleased. We're here for the second time. And, frankly, if the Tories or the Lib Dems or anybody else wants to come, it's great because it's a fabulous advert for the city of Manchester. People came here 2 years ago, and those, I'm allowed to say it on your programme, those snotty-nosed southern journalists
What could you possibly mean?
turned up, and they had all their preconceptions. They were saying silly things to me afterwards, like, we didn't know you had restaurants in Manchester. Well, we have learned to use a knife and fork.
I know. Well, some of us.
Yeah, some of us.
Yeah.
But of course, they were very impressed by it because it's a great city, and
And you do have this ability. We do have this ability to corral the whole thing. They refer to it as a village, but I think that's Southern Jesse journalism again.
Well, the sad ones, to be honest, there is this, as they say, the Ring of Steel.
Yeah.
Inside the Ring of Steel, you've got the Midland Hotel, the Radisson, and the Conference Centre, and the really sad people are the ones who never actually make it outside of that little cordon off area, because, of course, you've got the whole of the city of Manchester with all that it's got on offer, and it's good for business in the restaurants, the hotels, the pubs, etc., etc. But it's just a good advert for the city when people do break out of this place and see what Manchester really is like. And of course, 2 years ago we had some great publicity from that, so I was delighted, and I think we'll get the same again this year.
And if nothing else, it pokes a sharp stick in the eye of Blackpool, which we seem to enjoy.
Well, but the trouble is, I'm sorry about that, because you see, like most people in the Northwest, I've got a lot of sentimental affection for Blackpool.
But not enough to give them the casino or the conference.
Well, that's rivalry, and that's different. But they should have the conference.
You're going southern on me, Tony.
Instead of Brighton. They should have the conference instead of Brighton.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think most of us like Blackpool. The trouble is, my feet can't take the oilcloth anymore. No.
There was a piece in one of the papers about some of the Tory MPs when they stay in Blackpool, they have a competition who can get the cheapest bed and breakfast.
Well, I think it's about £6 a night.
It's about £6, and they're giving you that.
Well, I did see one Manchester £10 a night.
Really?
Yeah, it's amazing.
God, was that your bedroom?
It could be.
Man's got to live in the winter. Yeah. Well, you might be looking for work shortly, the way things are going. Dig, what's he going to say this afternoon? What can he say to pull it back?
Yeah,
I'm referring to the leader.
No, for sure. I've known Gordon for 25 years, and obviously when you know somebody as a human being, you know them in probably a different way to the way they come across in the media.
Yeah.
What is true, I'm bound to say this, aren't I? I mean, the media doesn't paint an exact picture of anybody, but least of all somebody who isn't as natural a communicator maybe as his predecessor, Tony Blair. But Gordon's a man of great personal values, great human values. What I hope he can do today is get across the fact that there is a human being in there, rather than just maybe a little bit too much the bank manager that people have seen over the years when he was the Chancellor. If he can do that and communicate why it is that in politics he thinks he can make a difference, and why he thinks that this Labour government of ours can make a difference to the kind of people that I represent, then we can begin to move. Because it is Gordon Brown. If you take a constituency like mine, it's not still, even now we were talking before about the great things about Manchester, but I still represent some of the poorest, some of the sickest people in this country, and I don't say that in a boastful way. It's a matter of perhaps the fact that we still are a nation with too many divisions between those cocaine snorting bankers who now have perhaps had the comeuppance, and ordinary people who sometimes struggle to...
They've not had their comeuppance, have they, really? Well, because your party has rushed to give away taxpayers' money to save their necks.
Well, we've saved Northern Rock, which is quite right, and we do have to save the banking system from collapse, because it's ordinary people whose pensions are a lot of in these things, and that's what I would want us to do is clamp down on those who they were saying the other day that the person from Lehman Brothers, I believe, the man who took them into collapse, was given £22 million or dollars in bonus last year. Now that's not something that equates to any kind of common sense. Even footballers would look a bit askance at that kind of money, and we criticise them for ridiculous earnings. But coming back to my own constituency, I mean, when you've got things like child poverty still a major issue, when you've got things like the need to close the health equality gap, to make sure a child born in Manchester tomorrow has the same life chances as the child born in Surrey, or even for that matter in
let's look
Cheshire.
At that. In the past decade of Labour, how have the people you just referred to in your constituents, and I don't mean the ones in the nice houses, I mean the ones that you were talking about, Manchester hasn't gone any further up the health rates, it hasn't got any further up in people dying young rates. So what has Labour achieved for those people?
No, that's not right. I mean, in actual fact, for the first time we've begun to see a slight closing of the health gap, but it does take it takes decades to close that health gap.
But we've seen dental services fall apart as far as the working class people or poor people are concerned. So much so now that they're putting them in Sainsbury's, like supermarkets.
No, but if you look at the things that we've begun to do, I mean, you know, in Manchester,
you can't. Tony, I mean, with respect, you can't claim begun to do. You've had a decade.
Yeah,
I don't mean you, but the party.
Begun to do does include, I think it's the second biggest hospital building programme in the country at Manchester Royal Infirmary and the Children's Hospital, where we're on the verge now of getting a state-of-the-art hospital. We had a quite clapped out Victorian hospital when Labour came into power. What we've got now at the end of this is something that is as good as anywhere in the country. And that is real progress, because for my constituents who need that hospital is for their local services, that's a position of excellence. We see across the board that there are literally thousands of people who are not dying of cancer. There are thousands of people who are not dying from heart conditions who would have died 10 years ago because we put the investment in the health service. So it is making a difference. But, you know, come round any part of my constituency, the centre of Manchester often looks like a building site, because the investment that's gone in East Manchester, which was collapsing when 10 years ago, in fact when I became the MP for that area, because my own constituency boundaries
jumbled about, didn't it?
That's right. And I was dismayed, I really was dismayed when I got to grips with East Manchester, just see the level of collapse. And now you've got an area, we're not finished yet, still got some way to go, but we've got investment not just in the bricks and mortar, but in the community that people are living in. And we've got things like Sure Start in our the early start in life, making a huge difference to ordinary people. Things like child poverty, I said before, there's you can bandage statistics around, but there are 600,000 children now in families who've been lifted out of poverty because of the actions of this Labour government. So for constituents like mine, Labour really has made a difference. And the one thing that I sometimes have said, perhaps a bit unkindly in the past, that Gordon Brown, not Tony Blair, was the driving force behind an awful lot of those things around the poverty issues, around the fairness agenda, and the things where we have made a difference. So I'm a big fan. Now, I know he hasn't come across in the last year, but I'm a big fan because I do know what difference that man has made to the people I represent.
But isn't the problem with the modern day politician that you have to be a performer? It's not good for politics, it might not even be good for the country or the people, but politicians are elected on television, and he's rubbish on the telly. I'm sorry, but he is.
Well, it's his chance today to perhaps turn that image round, and I don't run away from I don't run away from what you said. Gordon just isn't a natural performer. But in a way, you know, if we have an election in the end that's dominated by Big Brother style of politics, you know, I was saying to somebody the other day, you remember this thing the other year when David Cameron was riding his bike, but his papers were in the chauffeur-driven car behind. I think if Gordon had pulled that stunt, it would have Gordon's papers had been in the car and Gordon had been on the bike, because that's the difference of the.
Now there's a thought, you see. Men. I mean, it's a nice story, but I can't imagine Gordon Brown on a bike. I'm sorry, I just can't.
No, the point of them.
I know the point. It's back to the image, isn't it? He couldn't do that kind of thing. It's not his way.
But he wouldn't do it. You know, I mean, today people have said to me, "Are we going to see Gordon Brown doing the walkabout stuff that Nick Clegg tried and failed on last week?" And I just don't think, you know, if they haven't asked me on this, I'd be astonished if Gordon even tries that, because it's not his style.
Not what he does.
He is that stage, steady Scott, etc. And some people don't like that, but that's what he is, and he's not going to, at the age of 50 odd, going to change his whole persona. So we've got to play to his strengths, and his strengths are that when he goes off, he's leaving the conference today and he's going off to international meetings with the international financial community, trying to
sort out the world's finance.
Yeah, and that's the kind of stuff that we've got a big Prime Minister who can do that kind of stuff. And you're right, you can't juggle on stage, you can't wear a donkey's head and play pantomime, and if the modern world...
I'm intrigued you mentioned the donkey's head, because there are those that say he might wake up one morning with a horse's head on the pillow next to him because of the way he is.
Well, hey-ho,
a lot of people want rid of it.
I'm part of the inner guard trying to stop this happening. No, there's a few people in the Labour Party, but actually what we had these little rumblings last week, and you know, one or two of my colleagues got involved. But really, in the end, they could only find 13 people who were prepared to come forward and say that they were part of that little cabal. And the truth is, I've been in touch with an awful lot of Labour MPs, even over the summer when Parliament's not together. I know what the bulk of them think, and the bulk of them were really, honestly, were dismayed by what went on, which is why you're seeing this week, well, the media have played this down a bit, but there has been a lot of unity here, because ordinary party members, those who come as the constituency delegates, those who come at the unions, they're not saying to me, we're in a great place. We're not saying to me, we're dead happy with everything that's gone on. We are 20 points behind in the opinion poll, so we're not saying, wow, we're getting everything right. What they are saying is the answer is not a killing off of Gordon Brown. What they are saying, we want now to get out there to obviously refine the policies, make sure that what we're doing chimes with what the people of this country think we should be doing, explaining what it is we're doing around the present financial crisis, which we do need to do, because people will lose their jobs. People will find that struggle to lose their houses, struggle to pay the bills. So ordinary people have got to feel that this government includes them and is there trying to look after them. But what Gordon's also got to do is explain who he is, what he is, why, as I said before, why he's in politics, what he can do that'll make a difference to people's lives in the short term, defending them against the present financial situation, in the longer term trying to build the kind of Britain that we all want to live in.
Let's come back local. I was in Liverpool just recently and I saw that, is it called Liverpool One, the new shopping centre on the Duke of Westminster's land, and okay, it's not finished yet, but frankly it didn't strike me as being that exciting. Then you've got the Trafford Centre, which is owned by Peel Holdings, so you've got Peel Holdings owning everything connected to the Manchester Ship Canal. You've got the Duke of Westminster owning dirty great chunks of Liverpool. There's now this story that the people who've just bought or are in the process of buying Manchester City want to buy Eastland.
Yes.
That would create another, and I don't mean this in the offensive sense, but another monster that owns a big chunk of our city. Should they be allowed to?
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? Because we do need that kind of investment. I mean, one of the things that
but are we not like Harold Macmillan said? Would we not be selling off the Canaletto?
Well, we need to make sure that. I mean, in the end, I think the one thing actually from that this present global crisis has proved is that you can't just say that those who have the money, those who run the big operations, are automatically right. For perhaps a couple of decades, the world has been mesmerised by these so-called masters of the universe and their insistence that they know better than the ordinary person in the streets. Actually, now it's all blown up in their faces, but actually blown up in all our faces, and we're happy to rescue them, not for their good, but for our own good, as it happens. But irritatingly, those who've, I could use impolite words, but have not made a terribly good...
I think you make a great soundbite, Tony.
I have to be very careful.
Quite so.
So we do have to view with suspicion the idea that everything just gets driven by the demands of the private sector, because there's a balance, there's a human balance, and society actually is better. It is better when unlike Mrs. Thatcher was saying, there is such a thing as society. We really do want to make sure that the private sector doesn't drive out everything. One of the things, that...
But should we, I mean, we haven't a lot of time, should we, in simple terms, would selling Eastlands to the people that want Manchester City Football Club, would that be the lesser of all the evils, or would it be a good idea in your view?
Well, it'd be a good idea as long as it's done in conformity with what I mean, I represent those local communities.
I know.
I want them to feel comfortable in the area that they've lived in for many, many years, which we've improved because of the efforts actually this government, as it happens, to make into a...
But selling it to private enterprises, we've seen demonstrated in Liverpool, we've seen demonstrated, dear God, the BBC are going to be tenants of Peel Holdings, we've seen it with that. Once you sell it off, it's gone, you've lost control of it.
But we've got to make sure that the pattern and negotiation in this sense for people who want to come in and operate with the local council, that in that negotiation there is proper room for the community voice and to make sure the community interests are protected. Because look, what we're balancing out in Eastlands, I still need to see jobs in that area. We didn't get the casino, and we're still fighting to make sure that we get the jobs equivalent to the casino across Manchester. But if these new people want to come in and invest in the area to create employment, to create the kind of proper employment base that takes people in who with the skills they've got now, but as part of the process of upskilling people in that area, long-term real jobs for that community, then I can't say that's a bad thing. But your question still is right. We can't just let the whole thing be driven like some bow wave driving through everything simply because the law of the $1 billion.
They've got the Luca.
Yeah, because that's not how our world should be. Money counts, but people should count even more strongly.
Tony Lloyd, Manchester Central. Thank you very much indeed.
Nice
22 minutes past 1 on BBC Radio Manchester. Mark Edwardson's got the headlines.
Gordon Brown's preparing to make one of the most important speeches of his political career. He'll address the Labour Party conference in Manchester in about an hour's time. There are fears that several people have been killed in a shooting at a college in Western Finland, and age equality campaigners have lost the latest round of their legal battle to ban employers from forcing you to retire at 65. There's nothing to report, nothing major anyway, on the traffic and travel front, so looking at the weather, a pleasant afternoon, plenty of sunshine, top temperatures of 16 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester, 2020 traffic. Decongesting Manchester, one car at a time. 2020 traffic.
BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you. How are you? All right? Belting. I was asking them, but I'm asking you as well. We have with us Dermot Finch, who's Director of Centre for Cities, but from Clitheroe.
Yes,
fantastic
from Clitheroe.
town.
Absolutely.
With the castle and all of that.
Absolutely, and the sausages and all that.
Oh, yeah, of course, the sausage shop. Good one. Do you go in the coffee shop?
Yes.
Anyway, enough of that. Centre for Cities. I don't know. What's that?
Centre for Cities is based in London. We are a research group that looks at the economic performance of big cities like Manchester and Liverpool and Newcastle.
So how are we doing?
You've been doing well over the last 10 years.
That's a bit worrying.
Yeah, you've
We've been doing well, right.
The story that, we see in Manchester over the last 10 years is one of success and rebuilding the city. But I think the city's facing its first really big test in
what form? Why?
Well, I think we haven't yet seen what impact a recession will have on the city, and that is about to come. And we've got another big test, like the transport congestion charge vote that's coming up in December in Manchester. And I think those two things are going to be top of the pile for Manchester in the next few months.
I mean, I was talking to Ruth Kelly earlier,
yeah,
and talking about the 1.5. She kept insisting it was 2. I think it's 1.5. What the hell? She probably knows. She's a transport minister. But there's a couple of billion quid heading this way from government resources. I said, why won't they pay the 3? And she said, well, actually, Manchester's got, I think she said, 75% of all the transport development money for cities for the next decade. That sounds like we're doing pretty good at negotiating.
Yeah, what she's talking about, the deal on the table is that Ruth Kelly's transport department will cough up 1.5 billion quid for transport improvements, but only if 7 out of the 10 authorities across Greater Manchester say yes to a congestion charge, and that will raise another 1.5 billion. Indeed. So it's a 50-50 split.
But she's saying that if it goes according to that, and there are other hurdles, but she's saying that if it goes according to that, and we do get that first tranche of investment, that's a substantial proportion.
It is.
3/4 of her budget for a decade.
Not all of her budget. There's a pot of money that's been set aside called the Transport Innovation Fund. And absolutely. And the congestion bit of that, loads of that has been put on hold for Manchester if it votes yes. That's what she means. Okay. Not all of her budget. That's loads bigger.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
By
so
the city.
It's the budget that the Transport Department set aside to manage congestion. Greater Manchester, because no other big city has put forward a proposal yet like Greater Manchester has. That's why.
And what does that? I mean, my question, once we've established those facts, my question is, what does that tell everybody else and ourselves about ourselves?
Well, I think it means that leaders like Richard Lees, Peter Smith in Wigan are being quite brave in going for the TIF package, and other city leaders haven't got to that stage yet. And I think if Greater Manchester can vote yes, it will see bigger improvements in its transport compared to other cities over the next 10 years. That's the plus side. The bitter bit of the pill is that you're going to have a congestion charge to help pay for it. Yeah, and if you know, the central government's going to throw in £1.5 billion, but somewhere along the line, like in London, where there's a congestion charge, people in and around Manchester will have to pay a bit as well.
Now, that, on the face of it, sounds, well, that's not too bad. We get an awful lot of money in return for a small amount of investment by the local people. Fantastic and all of that. But they've still got to sell it politically.
Absolutely.
Do you think they can do that?
Well, I don't think it has been sold properly yet. I mean, the Centre for Cities supports congestion charging in principle, but you're not going to sell it if it's just a tax. You know, if you say
that's what everybody thinks it is.
Well,
and that's what it is.
In part, it is, yeah. But if you only say to people, "Would you like to pay more tax?" Of course, they're going to say no. What the people who support the TIF package need to be saying, and they're starting to, but not clearly enough. They need to be saying, if you're a pensioner wanting to get into town and out of town with good buses, yeah, that serve your local area, do you support the TIF package? Yes. If you don't have a car and you live in Bury and you want to get into town on good public transport, would you benefit from this? Yes. So they need to explain it like that.
Well, I understand.
Do you see what I mean?
But the question that keeps coming up when I talk to people, apart from the idea of who the hell is going to vote for a tax, the question that keeps coming up is that in London, when they introduced the congestion charge, they did put money into public transport, and public transport improved, some would say massively. But they could, because London has control of public transport.
And it's got an elected mayor.
And it's got an elected mayor, but we might get to that. But they have control of public transport. They don't in this part of the world. The government, the local authorities, the 10 local authorities have no say whatsoever in public transport. Yes, they can parcel money off to the private companies, but the private companies make the decision. Can they sell, or is it even feasible to suggest we will do this, when what they mean is we will give money to somebody else who might do this?
Well, there is a problem with the way that our big cities outside London are run. They don't have enough powers. They don't have enough financial powers compared to London. And you could argue that all this is happening a bit too soon for Greater Manchester, which has only just started with this Association of Greater Manchester Authorities coming together more closely.
I was going to say, it's not only just started, they've been around for a very long time. We own an airport, for God's sake.
They've been around for 20 years, but only about 2 or 3 months ago did AGMA get formal go-ahead to set up what's called a multi-area agreement. That's the new bit. Yeah. But it still doesn't have anything like the number of powers that Greater London has, yeah?
But it never will have, because...
it should have. Well, in our view, it should have.
Well, that's where we start getting to the mayor, isn't it? There won't be a... If there is ever an elected mayor, it won't be a mayor for Manchester.
No, it should be a mayor for Greater Manchester. Absolutely.
Now, that's another one, isn't it? The whole idea of elected mayors, great in London, not so clever in Hartlepool.
No.
But it died the death,
not so great in Stoke, actually.
Yeah, not so great in Stoke.
Not so great in Stoke.
But it died the death, didn't it? I mean, in the northeast, the whole thing fell apart.
Well, that wasn't an elected mayor debate. That was a debate about regional development agencies and regional assemblies, and that got a no vote.
But it was the devolution of power. That was the thing.
Yeah, but they didn't offer enough power. It was a rubbish offer, and the people of the northeast quite rightly said no thanks. That isn't a reason to offer more to Greater Manchester. It's a bit like saying, right, I said no to that rubbish thing, and we're offering a better thing to Greater Manchester. Well, you should say yes to it. I think that Greater Manchester would benefit from having more powers, and I think people in Greater Manchester would like their visible elected leaders to have control of money that puts buses on the road and puts FE colleges round the corner and helps people get a job rather than invisible, unelected quangos who they've never heard of.
Well, OK, I mean, if you mentioned 2 people who are doing a great job round here, Sir Richard Leese, elected, not a quango, and Lord Peter Smith.
In Wigan,
well, he's leader of Lee, Wigan, all that area. Great big area, that.
Yeah.
And he's the leader of that, and they're doing great. So they're not hiding their light under a bushel. You've got Roy Oldham in Trafford, he's not a secret. You know, these people are already in the public eye. How will having an elected mayor for the whole of Greater Manchester change anything, particularly in public transport, when they still won't own the transport?
Well, here's our argument. Let's give Peter and Richard and others the chance to sort of move Greater Manchester forward over the next few years. And if they can do that as a team, fantastic. They won't need an elected mayor. But if the vote against the TIF package is a no vote in December, and that £3 billion worth of transport improvement doesn't happen, I predict there will be some questions asked about how come London got that money through its congestion charge and we didn't. And the answer is they've got an elected mayor and Greater Manchester hasn't. I'm not saying a Greater Manchester elected mayor is the answer for everything, but it is easier to get tough decisions through if you've elected somebody on a mandate, on a manifesto at their election to say, are you for the congestion charge or against? So you could find a bit of a business community shift in favour of an elected mayor, and some people might start getting a bit fed up of 10 different leaders. Now, that's not for today or tomorrow, but I think if the TIF vote is a no one, people might start to reassess the case for an elected mayor.
Have you got any names in the frame? I might stand, you never know, I could be the elected mayor of Greater Manchester. The money will be good, won't it?
I don't know, actually. I don't know. I'm not sure that Boris Johnson I don't think he gets paid loads. I think cabinet ministers might get paid more, or people who run.
Years to become one of them.
I think people who run like regional development agencies get more than elected mayors.
Right.
Yeah, they get more money than elected mayors. Yeah.
So have you got any names for us?
Well, I would have liked to have seen somebody like Tony Wilson go for it when he was around. It is like, but somebody who's...
he was keen on regionalisation.
Yeah, he was,
very much involved.
I mean, it needn't necessarily be an established politician. It could be somebody who's got a reputation.
Charm, charisma.
Absolutely.
I've cracked it. So
why don't you go for it, Alan?
Well, we ain't got it yet. But if we do, we'll do something for Clitheroe just on the side.
Yes, please.
Dermot, good on you, mate. Thank you very much. Dermot Finch, Director of the Centre for Cities. We've got somebody wandering about this place with a microphone. His name's Justin Bones. He's our producer, but he's skid-aggle. What are you up to, Justin?
Well, I've joined the queue at the moment. There's a queue of, well, a couple of thousand people, I would say, all waiting to get into the auditorium at the moment for Gordon Brown's speech. Just to give you an explanation of how the GMEX is laid out, there's the big area that you see on the TV with the theatre and where all the bigwigs are making their speeches. Then there's the exhibition area where we are, which is all different organisations. I can see the Nuclear Industry Association, the British Humanist Association, and somebody called the BBC all have stands here. It's about an area, I'd say, about the size of a football pitch, and at the moment there's a queue stretching from the door at one end to the door at the other end of people waiting to actually come into the auditorium, ready for what's being classed as what needs to be Gordon Brown's speech of his life. I'm going to talk first of all to Katrina, who's also making the most of the catering facilities here. It looks interesting, if nothing else. Bit of meat in a bun.
Hot beef sandwich.
Is that what's going to get you geared up for Gordon?
Yes, it is. Yes. I fully support Gordon. I'm the Secretary of Enfield North, CLP. I think he deserves great credit for what he's done so far, and I support him 150%.
But that's what he's done so far. But is he the man that's really going to get you back into power after the next election?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. He's extremely capable. It's scandalous what's gone on in not supporting him. He deserves the support of the party. The circumstances over the last 6 weeks or so have been exceptional. He's the only man for the job. He's got a fantastic support in the constituencies and in the parliamentary party with the MPs, and that's what we need.
Okay, there's also some local people that have come down. We've got Sandra, who's here from Wythenshawe. Is that right, Sandra?
I am from Northern. Yes.
From Northern, so you've not had too far to travel for the conference. Are you staying in the Midland then?
No.
I mean, this has been classed as the speech of his life, really. This is what he needs to win back power in the party. But is it too late for that?
I don't think it's at that stage at all. I think the mood of the conference has all been very positive for Gordon Brown and good feeling about it. So no, I don't think that's the situation at all. So.
I've been round to lots of the fringe events, to some of the do's in the evening, you know, the hobnobbing and the like, and people are talking about it. They are talking about whether he can really cling on, whether he really is the man that's going to lead them into power. What does he need to say today to convince party members, whether they like him or don't like him, that he really will win them the next election?
I think it's the vision he gives for the future, really, and the confidence he gives in the way he handles the economy as well, because that's crucial to everybody's lives at the moment. So I think it's that kind of direction he needs to show.
What's that vision you want to see, though? What is the future all about?
It's to make people's lives better. The sort of thing we've seen in Wythenshawe over the last 10 years under a Labour government, things have really improved. Unemployment levels have dropped substantially. So it's that kind of onward, taking that a step further in the current economic climate.
Could David Miliband not do that better?
I think he's definitely got potential in the future, but I don't think it's his time yet, no.
OK, Councillor Mike Ainsbury is also here from Manchester City Council.
Hello.
Great to have the conference in your own backyard.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's great for the city. It brings in projected £18 million. So, and the sun is shining, of course, on Manchester and the Labour Party conference.
Like I said, I've been speaking to a lot of people who've been at the conference over the last few days. Every time we speak publicly to them, it's public backing for Gordon Brown. But I know that outside of this conference hall, people really aren't saying that. There really is talk going on of actually, is it time? Is now the time? It's not necessarily, it definitely is, but they're saying, is now the time to look at replacing Gordon Brown, or at least have a leadership challenge to get Gordon to step up to the plate. What are your thoughts?
Well, obviously I'm speaking to people as well, not only in the conference centre, but in the community, in the ward I represent. And believe me, it might be Westminster, tittle-tattle. There's a minority of people that might want to have those conversations. But the only jobs that Gordon Brown's interested in protecting are the jobs of people in Britain. So he's the man for the job. He's got the experience. He's the only one with the experience, and he's going to drive us through to the future. And we're going to win a fourth term under Gordon Brown. We're going to unite behind Gordon Brown.
But that minority can stir up some trouble, though, can't they?
Well, that minority may try and stir up some trouble, but look around the conference, you'll see some of the usual suspects, some of the rent-a-gobs, actually certainly not on the conference circuit. So, you know, they can stay out of here, they can stay out of this conference centre, because the odd individual that has come in here has had a hard time, and rightfully so. It's a united party. We're going to win a fourth term. We're going to win it together behind Gordon Brown.
OK, Michael's also here from Wythenshawe. Michael, what does Gordon Brown need to say today? Specifically, how does he win back the support of all his party?
Well, Justin, there's very few silver bullet speeches in politics, but this is an important speech. He has to unify the party, but more importantly, he has to be telling the country about what he will do in this these economic turbulent times, and he really has to pick it up this afternoon, take the attack message to the Tories, because they've been getting away with blue murder, announcing spending cuts, devastation on our public services, on business and on the environment, the things that they would do. And he really needs today to be taking that message to the country, attacking the Tories and showing what a positive agenda Labour has for the future.
So there is support here, Alan, for Gordon Brown. I think, like I said, there's people here are certainly publicly supporting Gordon Brown at the moment. And in about 3/4 of an hour's time now, he'll be standing up on that podium. I don't know if he'll be walking around quite like Nick Clegg was last week, but certainly this is his chance to prove that he is the leader to carry Labour into the next election.
I'm not altogether sure what you mean when you say public supporting Gordon Brown. What implications are held therein? We shall not dwell. Why would we dwell, for heaven's sake? If you've a thought and you want to share it with us, feel free. You can do it via email today. We're not doing phone calls, but it's radiomanchester@bbc.co.uk. Me, and you just heard Justin Bones, me being Allan Beswick, and Justin Bones are, of course, at the Labour Party conference where it's all going. And as we say, just over an hour from now, we'll be finding out, well, whether he has got the, whether he has got the presence that is required to reconvince people that the Labour Party is the way forward. We shall see. I wonder what he's doing right now. I bet he's having a glass of water and he's got all them people psyching him up. You can do it, Gordon. You can do it, Gordon. Gordon, you can do it. And quite a lot of them are saying, do you know what, I don't really believe this. But never mind, it's 20 to 2 on BBC Radio Manchester. And with the news headlines, is it still Mark?
It's Michelle Adamson.
It's Michelle Adamson.
Gordon Brown's preparing to make one of the most important speeches of his political career. He'll address the Labour Party conference in just over half an hour's time in Manchester. 9 people have been killed at a school in Finland after a student there went on a shooting rampage. The Bury-based sportswear retailer JD Sports has bucked the current economic storm and reported a 71% increase in half-year profits. Manchester's weather, a pleasant afternoon, plenty of sunshine and a top temperature of 16 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Well, let's take a quick look now to the M66, and if you're heading on the southbound stretch of carriageway from Junction 4 towards Junction 3, be aware there's some debris on the carriageway closing off a lane. Details fairly sketchy at the moment, but of course we will update you in the next bulletin. M61 traffic southbound actually not coping too well, but we do not coping too badly, I should say. We do have some roadworks there between Junction 9 Claytonbrook and Junction 8 at Chorley, so if that's the way you're heading, it is a bit further out, but watch out for some slight build-ups later on in the afternoon. Now, don't forget, if you can update me further, call in on the travel line. The number you need, 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester, Sports with Dennis Lloyd.
Good afternoon. Manchester City's new chairman, Khaldoon Al Mubarak, has outlined his plans to build a dynasty at Eastlands over the next 10 years, with Mark Hughes key to his vision of a golden era of sustained success. The takeover of the club by the Abu Dhabi United Group will be completed later today. Mark Elliott reports.
Khaldoon Al Mubarak predicts an exciting decade for the club, saying the investment is for the future. He says he and owner Sheikh Mansour are extremely happy and delighted to be a part of Manchester City, and they're genuine people who want to develop the club in a sustainable manner and aren't going to do crazy stuff. And he says they won't interfere with matters on the field. He describes manager Mark Hughes as good as they get and everything you'd want in a head coach. The new owners have also outlined their intent to build on the success of the club's academy, making it the best in Europe. The new chairman's already spent time at Platt Lane with academy director Jim Cassell.
An independent tribunal has ruled in favour of Sheffield United and against West Ham over the Carlos Tevez affair. United claim Tevez wasn't eligible to play at the end of the 2006-07 season, yet played a key role in West Ham's Premiership survival at their expense. The club is claiming more than £30 million in compensation from West Ham. Another tribunal will decide on the amount of compensation to be paid. Mike Phelan believes the decision to name him as Manchester United assistant manager will help keep the club stable and build on the success of last season. Phelan, who recently replaced Carlos Queiroz, admits, though, that he has a different personality compared to manager Alex Ferguson.
Well, I'm not like the manager, that's for sure. I mean, is there two of them around the place? Can we put up with two of them? I'm nowhere near like the manager. I mean, I'm not a manager, I haven't managed. From my point of view, it's an extension to my coaching abilities, and that's the way I see it. I have more decisions to make, certainly, but I relish that chance. You know, that is something that I feel capable of doing.
United host Middlesbrough in the third round of the Carling Cup tonight. Manchester Sports with Steve Wyeth and the Rochdale boss Keith Hill is live from Old Trafford from 7. Lancashire batsman Mal Loy replaces Francois Duplessis in the squad for the County Championship match at Somerset, which starts tomorrow. Andrew Flintoff and James Anderson are both rested from domestic matches on the request of the ECB. Lancs need 7 points from the match to ensure their Division 1 status for next season. Warrington have told BBC Radio Manchester that they're in talks with Salford over a possible move to the Willows for forward Rob Parker. The Wolves' front rower is surplus to requirements at the Halliwell-Jones Stadium. Meanwhile, Salford have asked for RFL for clarification that Craig Stapleton and Philip Lulai will become exempt from the overseas quota. Dutchman Charles van Commenay has been confirmed as the new head coach of British athletics through to the 2012 London Olympics. Van Commenay replaces Dave Collins after UK athletics opted to scrap the role of performance director in favour of a more hands-on coaching position.
It reflects more the fact that I'll be not working from behind the desk. I'll be spending time with athletes and coaches at the venues where they work out. I will not be an office person. I do expect coaches not to be office people. They make the difference at the track. That's where we'll have to win the medals. And the other people in the organisation looking after paperwork and structures.
The next live action on the Northwest's biggest sports station.
As you've been hearing, Manchester United begin their Carling Cup campaign tonight against Middlesbrough. The all-new Manchester Sports comes live from Old Trafford with Steve Wyeth and his special guest, the Rochdale boss, Keith Hill.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Welcome back to the Labour Party conference at Manchester Central. GMAX, call it what you will, we're here. And so has everybody who's anybody in politics, certainly in, I nearly said left-wing politics, but that was probably a silly thing to say. Labour politics, it's not the same thing by any means. A few moments ago, before the sport, I was wondering just what state Gordon Brown will be in now. He's going to make what some say is the speech of his life, certainly the speech of his political career. And I was wondering, will they be psyching, Gordon, you can do it and all that, like they do with footballers and and boxers and all the rest of it. Well, one man who just might know the answer to that question is the former press secretary of Gordon Brown and still fan, Charlie Whelan. Hi, all right?
Yeah, I'm great. Yeah, I mean, Gordon will be a bit nervous, but he'll probably be cracking a few jokes because that's what you do when you're nervous.
Does he do jokes?
If only he'd tell his jokes like, you know, everyone. But he's got a few jokes in his speech, I think. I hope he has. Anyway, but there'll be a warm-up area, like in a football, we have a warm-up sort of room. They have a warm-up area where he can practice his speech with those little boards they have. They actually read it off these funny boards.
Yeah. So he's not going, everybody's saying he's not going to do the Clegg walkabout.
Well, look, you know, I mean, that's a sort of PR stunt, the sort of thing that Cameron does, isn't it? This is serious politics. You know, a serious politician stands behind that podium and makes a serious speech because, you know, these are serious times. You know, people here in Manchester, people are worried about their jobs now. They're worried about, you know, if they've got a bank account, they'll be worried about that. So, you know, people want a serious politician to be in charge. You know, not some flaky like Clegg or PR man like Cameron. So
or somebody like Blair.
No,
flaky and PR.
Yeah. No, look, the contrast today is between Gordon Brown, you know, a heavyweight against Cameron the lightweight. I mean, you know, we do pollings in the union I belong to, Unite, and we ask our members about this. 65% of them are saying they see Cameron as a lightweight, and that's crucial because in tough economic times, you want someone tough to be running the country.
But isn't that, to put the same question, isn't that what they said about Blair? He's a lightweight. He's, you know.
Well, no, who said Blair was a lightweight? I mean, they might
back when they were deciding whether
Bambi, didn't they? Remember that?
I remember, yes. But he got elected. Because charisma's what gets you elected.
Well, hang on. Look, come on, Labour got elected because the Tories have made such a mess of the country, which they would do if they got elected again. Look, people have got long memories. They remember 15% inflation. You know, we've got low inflation now. Might have economic difficulties. Nothing like the negativity under the Tories, the millions of jobs lost, the destitution. So look, you know, I don't forget, and I don't think your listeners will forget what happened when the Tories were around.
Do you know? You think? I mean, you made that statement. People have got long memories. I'm not altogether sure they have, because
you're not saying people are stupid, are you?
I'm not saying they're stupid. No. I'm saying that they look at what they've got now and they think, actually, what we've got now is not very good. Let's try something else. That's how we got Labour. That might be how we get whoever wins.
Hang on a second. We got Labour because Labour had sensible policies, and like they still have. And you know, here we've got a man running the country who's been 10 years in the job of Chancellor. I mean, that is someone who's got experience. You know, the point is, are people going to risk in 18? Look, anyway, not an election for 18 months, but you know, 18 months' time, are they going to risk everything with some lightweight like Cameron, PR? But you know, do you know what people most remember about Cameron? He goes to work on a bicycle and has a car behind him.
Person to mention
he has a car behind him, you know, taking his bags for him. You know, people aren't stupid.
Well, okay, I will grant you that people aren't stupid, perhaps for me. But what's he going to say today? What's he got that is going to win it round? It's not going to be one of those great moments, oh, it's all turned round. But what's he going to say to tell the people, yes, I am the man for the job in 18 months' time? To tell his own cabinet that I am the man for the job?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair question, Alan, but I don't know because I haven't read his speech.
Well, I know you don't know, but you know the man and you know politics inside out.
You know, look, of course, he will talk about the state of the economy, and he will talk about fat cats, he might use the word cat back, and the problems there are in the city, and, you know, how we need to do something about that. But also, of course, let's never forget, this is an international problem. We might do something with the Bank of England or the Financial Service Agency over here. It is actually a world crisis, so you know.
He flies out tomorrow.
He's flying out tomorrow. So you know, so he will talk about that. He'll say, look, you know, Northern Rock, we sorted it straight away. You know, only this week. They banned all this silly gambling that you get in the stock market. So, you know, he's doing things at the moment. He'll continue to do things. So he'll talk about that. But he will talk about himself, and you know, because you know, Gordon Brown's is much more private person than, say, Tony Blair or Cameron. You know, Cameron's quite prepared to, you know, bring the cameras in his kitchen, use his kids as props and all this sort of stuff. Well, you know, that's not Gordon Brown, is it? So, you know, but I think he'll probably talk about that as well.
Has he got the ability to convince the electorate that he's the man for the job? And it's not about what he says, it's not even about what he does, it's about the way he deports himself on what we'll call the public stage, and there's no more public stage for him than the one today.
Yeah, well, that's important, but you know, what do people really want? I think people just, they want, at the moment, they want a serious politician. They don't want someone dancing around a stage.
I bet Cameron doesn't do that next week. Giving the stick that Clegg got.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, it seems like a clever thing to do, doesn't it? But it's you know, there are times when you could do that. Look, I was out at the Democratic convention. You know, you didn't see Clinton or Obama sort of dancing around the stage, did you? At the rostrum, serious people, serious politicians, serious speech.
And what about this tie then? Because Obama seems to be doing a little bit better in the polls because of the way Bush and others are witnessing the downfall of their empires.
Yeah.
If you bring that to here, isn't Gordon Brown watching the downfall of his empire? Well, he's the man for money, and money's kicking everybody.
Yeah, you can't always compare it because, of course, the credit crunch actually, you know, started in America. It was nothing that happened in Britain. Therefore, you know, therefore McCain can be seen as part of the blame. So therefore, Obama can say, well, look, it was all your fault. So, but it's slightly different over here. Nobody's saying, well, some people obviously, the Tories saying it's the fault of Gordon Brown. It clearly isn't Gordon Brown's fault that this has happened to the economy, but they do see him as someone of stature who could do something about it. But it is interesting in America. I mean, it's always interesting to see what's happening over the pond, but it doesn't always reflect exactly what's happening over here.
And I've forgotten which minister it was, but was caught suggesting that there was an emotional tie, if nothing else, between Labour and the Democrats.
Well, it's more than that. I mean, as I say, I'm a keen Labour supporter, as you know, member of the Labour Party. I was out at the Democratic convention. There's a very strong tie. I mean, convention has it the Prime Minister can't say he supports McCain or Obama, but privately, of course, it's obvious who he supports, isn't it? But you know,
you would think.
yeah. So,
I mean, seeing as we're talking about ties, and you're from Unite these days, you're no longer in. I mean, you're still a supporter of Gordon Brown and the party, but you're from Unite. Yeah. What about this relationship between the Labour Party and the trade union movement? It's been strained in recent years, and it's still a little uncomfortable.
Well, Alan, the trade unions invented the party. The trade union said, let's form a political party, and here it is, the Labour Party.
That's a century ago.
So they're very much part of it. You know, I don't. You know, many delegates here are in trade unions. Or every delegate here is in a trade union. So you know, there's not a problem. The strange comes sometimes when a union wants something a bit more than what the government perhaps thinks they can deliver. But you're always going to have that. But the main thing is, I mean, particularly this week, at the end of the day, all the unions 100% united around Gordon Brown, and that's the reality.
Well, certainly 100% behind the Labour Party. I don't know that all the leaders would.
Well, they are, because you had a few of these, I don't know what you call them, ERs.
ERs?
Well, you know, they've lost the plot.
All right.
Okay.
I've accepted ERs, yeah.
So look, you know, that's united people who before previously maybe not so keen on Gordon, but are now.
Okay, but the relationship between the Labour Party and the trade union movement was what gave Thatcher her power, because she was able to fight the miners, and some say win, some say lose. Well, history says that kind of thing.
Well, you know, history says all sorts of things. You know, I saw that, you know, Thatcher devastated the coal communities of this country.
Indeed.
That's a bad thing, you know. So we never want to go back to that.
Well, no one suggests we go back to that, but the reality is that she took on the unions because the public at large believed the union.
Okay, we're having a history lesson here, Alan.
We're not having a history lesson. We're having a discussion, and you can't
all sorts of things happened 20, 30, 40 years ago. We are where we are now. You know, the trade unions are working in partnership.
But do you think? Well, okay. But do you think the public are still afraid of the trade union movement?
Well, they shouldn't be, because millions of people are members of a trade union.
They were then.
I mean, I should think. You know,
they were then, and were worried about.
I mean, what happens if unions divorce themselves from their members and start doing stupid things? Yes, but you know, there's no evidence of that. I mean, you know, quite the contrary. You know, I mean, the unions are speaking for people. When the union says this week, you know, we want to hit the fat cat oil companies, I think most of your listeners would support that. So in fact, the unions are probably more in touch with the British public than anybody else.
And do you think there will be any fallback when the trade union movement, that effectively, apart from J.K. Rowling, funds the Labour Party, will they, when the Labour Party is low, which it is at the moment, not start flexing their muscles and say, well, we want a bigger say for our money?
No. I mean, it doesn't work like that. You know, we recently gave £2 million to Labour Party. We didn't say, by the way, Gordon, we want you to do this, that, and the other. It's unconditional. There's your money. J.K. Rowling didn't say to Gordon, here's £1 million, I want you to, you know, subsidise Harry Potter books. It doesn't work like that.
I don't think they need it.
I know, £1 million wasn't much, really, when you think how rich she is.
I know, it's extraordinary. She's only written a couple of books, for God's sake. Why did they get that? Where's the justice on the planet?
The important thing about that was, of course, it's, you know, people, you know, she's put her money where her mouth is, backing Labour. That, you encourage other people to give money. Yeah, because the Labour Party does need money to fight elections and what have you.
And what about Charlie Willie? Here you are. You're now with the union. Do you not have any other ambitions politically yourself?
No, of course not.
No, of course not. He said, do I look stupid?
You know what? I'm looking forward at the end of this conference to go back home. I live in Scotland now, you know, and have a few days salmon fishing. That's what I'm looking
Is that the way forward, is it? Well, the Countryside Association are over there. They'll tell you where all the best fishes
no,
are.
they like me, you know, so...
Yeah, I'm not surprised if you fish for salmon.
So,
I mean, that whole thing, it seems to have died, but I noticed because they're all here, aren't they? Everybody's here. But I noticed, I forgot what they call themselves now. But
Countryside Alliance as well.
Yeah, that's them, but just across them is the fox hunting as well, you know. Stop fox hunting. It is strange. I mean, you've been to hundreds of these. I only ever go to the ones here.
Yeah.
It's odd who turns out, isn't it?
No, there's this, I mean, it's difficult to explain to the listeners, but there's literally hundreds of different stands, all wonderfully constructed. It must cost millions of pounds.
Your lot are there with your double-decker stand again. That's where the union money goes, on that fancy stand, and him up there drinking free coffee. I know, it's extraordinary.
But the Falkland Islands Company
I was just reading that. They even tell you how to get there, which is wonderful. You have to go via Patagonia or something. What can they possibly gain from being here? All of them, not just them.
Well, they're lobbying the government, really, aren't they? There's ministers. This is the one place, once a year, where anybody almost can go up. I mean, a minute ago we saw a couple of cabinet ministers. I mean, John Preston went past.
We went past. I spoke to you. He ignored me.
Miliband went past earlier. You know, so something you could potentially go up and say, well, Dave, this problem we got in the Falkland Islands. You know, it's a marvellous place for people to meet face to face with cabinet ministers.
And what about Miliband jumping the coffee queue? That wasn't clever, was it?
Did it?
But he didn't. Have you not read the papers? Oh. You never read them now. You have nothing to do with them.
Look at this.
Charlie, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's great.
Enjoy Gordon. I'm sure it'll be fabulous.
I've got to go and join that queue.
Well, good to meet you. Thank you very much indeed. Have a great the remainder of the conference. There you are. Anyway, we're nearly done, aren't we, really? One way or the other. In fact, we're absolutely done, as the phrase goes. We've got about another 30 seconds. Everybody to do with Labour politics is here, and as I say, everybody else as well. And there are all sorts of stands. It is quite extraordinary, and I'm sure if you go to the Conservative Party conference in Bournemouth, I think it is next week, you'll find again all the different. And we're set up as there's a stand there for the Independent newspaper, and rather interestingly, they're giving them away. Front page of the Independent, the California burning. I don't know what date that was. All their best front pages. The face of a doomed species, a close-up of a tiger. Perhaps they could change that and put Gordon Brown on there. The face of a doomed species, a Labour politician. We shall see. The election is coming. We know not when, but we think Gordon Brown has managed already to ride out the storm that he found himself at the centre of. Whether he'll still be the leader of the party at the next election, if I had to put a pound on it, and I don't, my pound would say yes.